Welcome to Notes from the North with Kyle and Sam.
Welcome back to Notes from the North, the official podcast of the Vikings Gazette. We're proud to partner with Vikings Territory, Purple PTSD, and Purple Territory Radio. If you're looking for great Vikings coverage, be sure to stop by these sites, and you're always welcome at the Vikings Gazette. With that being said, Kyle, let's get the first down. And I guess probably the biggest news of this week was the schedule release. Any particularly notable games that you have seen on the schedule?
Yeah, I think so. I think so the schedule release, I like how the NFL has done this now. Before, they would announce it before the draft, and it would kind of the draft is this massive event. It's and so it was a big deal before, but it kind of quickly faded into the background to a certain extent because the draft just takes over everything. But now they do it post-draft, and I think it actually makes sense because it gives the month of May kind of like a marquee event. And so as much as I kind of hate to say it, the NFL actually really made a good decision, I think, on this one. First, in terms of the games, I mean, we start off with the Bengals. It should be a win. Week 2 is the Cardinals. That to me is somewhat evenly matched. I mean, you get two teams in the NFC who could reasonably do well and could pretty reasonably do pretty mediocre. To me, I'm kind of looking at week 3 and week 4 as like the first real big tests. I'm excited about the Seattle game. It's at US Bank Stadium, which is a big deal because we've played the Seahawks for several years in a row now and is always in Seattle, which of course it's just so difficult to play in Seattle. So, I mean, we've lost. I don't think we've beat the Seahawks since Zimmer's been here. We've always been competitive, and we always seem to lose in some sort of heartbreaking fashion. You go back to last season, Alexander Mattison missing that giant hole, which would have sealed the win. And then, you had Cameron Dantzler and DK Metcalf, that whole thing, in the last second or the last minute or so, I guess, the drive with Russell Wilson. I mean, that was just a horrible way to lose, right? And that just seems to happen so consistently with us and the Seahawks. If we win in week 3 against Seattle, that to me is the litmus test, because they're the team we want to be. They're the team who, for the past 10 years or so, they've had a defensive first head coach. They've gotten to 2 Super Bowls. They've won 1. They go to the playoffs almost every year. They're almost always a top team in the conference. Their quarterback is clutch. They don't ask him to do a lot. He could probably do more, but they don't ask him to do a lot, and he's usually really excellent whenever he does need to step up. Seattle is who Minnesota wants to be. And so to me, that week 3 game is the first one. And then, of course, the Cleveland Browns in week 4, Kevin Stefanski. And Cleveland's got a good team. Like, they're a complete roster. I mean, they're the Browns, and so who knows what they'll end up doing this year. But week 3 and week 4, I think, are the first real tests for me. What kind of stands out to you there?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when I saw these first 4 games, it feels like you got to hope minimum you go 2-2 in that, and if not better, right? Is that fair?
I think when I was kind of thinking about it, I was kind of thinking the first 6 games because we have our bye week,
right?
In week 7. So to me, when I was looking at the first 6 games, I was looking we need to go at least 4-2.
Right. Okay.
Because I think in at least 3 of those games, you're the clear favorite. So in week 1 against the Bengals, you're the favorite. Week 5, the Lions. Week 6, the Panthers. So Those are 3 games where you say to yourself, okay, right off the hop, we should be we're better than these 3 teams, no doubt about it. So therefore, we should beat them. Okay. So that puts us at worst case. Obviously, this is not, neither Sam and I are saying that this is automatic, but we're saying that we're favored to beat these teams. We should beat these teams. Okay, so that should put us at least 3 wins. And then you have reasonably tough games against the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Browns. To me, you got to get at the very least one of those.
Right.
Ideally, at least 2, right? And you get to 4-2, maybe 5-1 heading into your bye. Because, last year is the same. It was almost the same setup. You had these initial 6 weeks. We went into the bye at 1-5.
Yeah, and
we need to flip that around.
And you're
right?
You're messed at that point. So
exactly.
I looked it up quickly. Hazard a guess on when the last time that Minnesota actually beat Seattle.
Oh my dear, it was definitely before Zimmer.
2008, 2009. So November 22nd.
Is that right? I was thinking the last time, because I was thinking like the years before Zimmer, we really weren't very good. So I know, so Zimmer gets me 7-8 years. So I was thinking 2009 we were really good. So yeah, okay, that's what I was.
Yeah,
that was my okay. That makes sense.
That was in Minnesota. So last time they've actually won in Seattle is 2006.
Right. Yeah. Right. They're just one of those teams. They just play us tough, and I can't really. I mean, I can explain it. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. Pete Carroll is a really good head coach. They've done an excellent job over there. They've had, just great teams, right? So, but what I can't explain, we just have these huge errors, right? From the Blair Walsh field goal miss from like 27 yards to just the Alexander Matterson thing to the Dantzler thing. Like, we just have these errors that are so peculiar. They should never happen, right? In a football field, it's 99 times out of 100 they go your way, and yet when we play Seattle, it's that one time out of 100. And so to me, that week 3 game is huge, I think.
Yeah. And I like the idea of you breaking it down in terms of like thinking about it in a 6-game set, because I think that regardless, like at the end of the day, if you're 4-2 coming out of that 6-week set, even if say the 2 losses, heaven forbid, were against like the Lions and the Bengals, you're still looking at that and you're like, okay, 4-2, like that's still a success at that point.
Right. Exactly. And then you come out of the bye.
Right. That's where I see.
Right. Exactly. Like you want to, we can't be behind the sticks coming out of the bye because the schedule's so tough, right? We still got 5 divisional games coming up. And then we start off in week 8 with the Cowboys in prime time. And then we have the Ravens on the road. And then we have the Chargers, who I really like the Chargers. I think they're a good team. And then you have the Packers and then the Niners. Like, you just have this really difficult schedule coming out of the bye. And I know week 13, you get a little bit of rest in a sense that you have the Lions, but then you're right back to the Steelers and then the Bears and then the Rams and then the Packers. I mean, the post-bye schedule is pretty vicious. It looks to be a really difficult post-bye run there.
It is. I started looking and I was like, kind of looking in 2-3 game sets, and I just realized that when you look at that period from starting with the Cowboys on Halloween, going all the way until the 49ers at the end of November there, that's a difficult 5-game stretch.
Exactly.
And then, you said like there's games after the fact. You got the Lions still there. But all these teams, like there's a chance. I don't like Steelers, like you said, be a good team. I wonder, looking at playing the Bears twice late in the season, I feel like I would much rather have played the Bears early.
Me too. I mean, it's not just the Bears. I mean, yes, you got week 15 and then week 18, but then sandwiched in between that is the Rams, who in all likelihood are going to be a top team in the NFC, and then week 17 is the Packers. So the final 4 games, you get 3 division rivals. It's on the road in week 17 against the Packers, which obviously makes it more difficult because then the weather is going to probably favor Green Bay because it's probably going to be pretty nasty. And then, the Bears. I mean, they're the team. I don't know if maybe even a step above Seattle in terms of the difficulty of beating Chicago. We just seem to struggle with those guys so much. Even when they're an average team that season, they just give us all we can handle. And so week 15, we've got the Monday Nighter in Chicago. And so to me, this is probably about the time where I don't really foresee Minnesota being like, 10-1, 10-2 or something like that. I don't foresee the late schedule being at a point where like the Vikings really don't have to grind it out. If we do make the playoffs, it's probably going to be a grind right until the very end. And so what I'm trying to say is that these games are really going to matter. And so, boys, that's going to be a difficult stretch to end your season, eh?
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot. They're really going to have to. We're talking about this in May, and who knows? Like, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Because I think it would be actually interesting just even to listen back and think about where we're at. Because who knows what happens, right? Like, you get a couple of injuries on some of these teams, and all of a sudden the matchup is just not nearly as severe. Although I think, especially when you look at division rivals, the history kind of precedes any really like factor of roster construction, right? Like, regardless of how they're built, you're still there. I did find it interesting. I saw Patrick Patterson was mentioning that there's 4 primetime games, which feels significant considering the past history with the Vikings, or maybe it's not. But to have 4 games, you got the Cowboys and the Vikings. You got the Bears and the Vikings, their first matchup. The Steelers and the Packers are all primetime games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Steelers are a Thursday nighter,
Right.
and then you get 2 Sunday nighters, and then the Monday nighter against Chicago. And so to me, I mean, yeah, the Packers and the Bears, I mean, you get the division games; those are kind of freebies in a sense. Teams always get primetime games against division rivals, and then the Steelers and then the Cowboys. I mean, those are 2 of your marquee franchises in the NFL, right? And so the NFL always wants to put the Cowboys in front of a national audience, right? And it could probably similar in a sense to the Steelers. You have this, proud franchise with this long tradition. And Minnesota, I mean, we get tradition as well. Obviously, we haven't had nearly the success as these other franchises, but it is a lot. But I guess, 17 games, 4 of which are prime time. I mean, boys, Kirk Cousins is going to have plenty of opportunity to kind of further put away that narrative about him not stepping up in prime time, and especially coming down the stretch. You got a Thursday nighter, a Monday nighter, and a Sunday nighter. From week 14 on, you get 3, right in those final 5 games, and so it's all going to be right there for Cousins to take. So,
and you're really hoping that they're like at that point. There's a lot to be playing for and a lot to be fighting for. I wonder what you would have hazarded a guess in terms of what their record would have been before you saw the schedule versus now seeing it. But first chance, first opportunity, fresh into the schedule release. What would you say your early guesses for a final record?
My early honest guess right now is without having done like a week by week thinking about it too much. My first honest guess is 10-7. That's kind of where 10-7 sounds about right to me.
Okay. And that feels very much borderline of getting in.
I think with 7 teams, I think 10-7 should get you there. I mean, it seems like every year you have that 6th seed ends up going to a team who's like, I mean, it was 16 games up until this year. So it was always like 8-8 or 9-7. And so 10-7, I imagine, will get you that 6th or 7th seed. I suspect.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I think 10-7. That I feel like if you're kind of odds makers, I don't know what everyone would have it as right now in terms of where they're at, but yeah, 10-7 seems fair. I'm going to one up. I'm going 11-6.
All right. Yeah, that's good.
I think I feel hopeful, and I feel like they're in a good spot. And it's so early and so far away that obviously we'll have to reevaluate once we get to the end of the off season, and there's still lots to happen. But I'm there's no reason to not be hopeful at this point. So let's go for it.
True enough.
Yeah,
true enough.
Do want to switch over to second down, and I know last episode we talked about the first 3 rounds and talked about the first 4 picks there, and there were several mid to late round picks here. When we move beyond the 3rd round, who would you say should fans be most excited about, or maybe even who are you personally most excited about?
Yeah, so we were before hopping on, we were talking about this a little bit. I don't want to do like a full. It'd be tedious to do like a pick by pick, a little opinion bit. But I'll say of those final picks, I'm most excited about Janarius Robinson, Emir Smith-Marset, and Jalen Twyman. And so for Robinson, I'm sure a lot of folks have seen by now Andre Patterson's comments where he talks about him as the player that he really wanted to target. His exact quote, if you go into Sean Borman, we had Sean Borman on our podcast not long ago. If you go into his Twitter, he's got the quote there. And this is Andre Patterson, who is the defensive line coach and the co-defensive coordinator. And he says, quote, I always find that guy in the draft where I say, man, I'd love to get my hands on this kid. And he's the guy. And so to me, that's exciting because, Patterson, every draft he goes in and wants a player someone who's very fast, very long, very explosive, but just needs a little bit of polish, right? And that was Danielle Hunter. That was Stephen Weatherly. That was Afidi Adenabo. That was all kinds of folks. Everson Griffin, took that next step with Andre Patterson. So he just has this history of really, he's a wonderful defensive line coach. DJ Wanham was that player last year. And I know that the Draft Network, I was just looking back at the piece I put together for TVG, kind of recapping the day 3. The Draft Network actually had Robinson as their 74th ranked prospect, which you're talking about the middle of the 3rd round now, right? Even, relatively close to the front of the 3rd rounds, but the Vikings got him at 134. So it's pretty good value. And they talk about the exact quotes were his immense physical gifts on the field. He needs help with his immense physical gifts on the field and to help deploy his pass rush plan a little bit quicker. So they just talk about how he has plenty of tools. He's got length, flexibility, rush variety, effort, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all quotes from the Draft Network write-up. And so to me, that is just the prototypical Vikings defensive end in the middle rounds. Just someone who just has tons and tons of upside, who needs a coach to help him and to really get to that next level. And that's Andre Patterson. And so Janarius Robinson to me is very, very exciting. Are there any, when you look at that group, I got a couple thoughts about Smith, Marset, and Twyman, but when you look at that group, is there someone who you're also excited about?
Yeah, I was going to say Smith, Marset. I do feel like there was definitely a significant need for wide receiver 3. And I know you've got some thoughts on him, so maybe I'll let you go first before I jump in. But I would say that he's definitely the guy. Like, I think that taking the chance that they did in terms of drafting some of these guys, like you said, Robinson and Twyman and others that are on this defensive line are significant. Yeah. That was an issue last year for sure.
Definitely.
Injuries were a factor, but also people face injuries, and you got to make sure that you're ready to go.
Totally.
So I think that to pick up on your point about what Patterson was saying about Robinson, I do think that is such an undervalued piece of even player development, is the idea of having a coach that significantly believes in you and like wants to give you a chance. Like,
exactly.
Some of these guys, like if a coach actually isn't a huge fan of someone, who, like, the opportunities they get, the positions they're put in place, the development, the belief in that development will impact where they're at. Definitely plays a factor.
You get the sense that Patterson like falls in love with these guys, right? Falls in love with these guys who work hard, who want to be great, who want to succeed, who have this potential. But for whatever reason, maybe didn't produce a ton in college, or maybe are just like a little bit raw and they need to refine their stuff a little bit more. You get the sense that by the 3rd or 4th round, Patterson is banging the table for these guys. He's just saying, like, we need to draft this kid. We need to draft this kid. And I love that personally. He's not always successful. Like, I can think of draft picks who really haven't worked out super well on the defensive line. But man, oh man, when he hits, when you get a Danielle Hunter in the 3rd round, when you get a Afidi Adenabo in the 7th round, right? I think Everson Griffin ended up was a 4th round pick. Some of these guys who are just, Adenabo wasn't a Pro Bowl player, but like Griffin was a Pro Bowl guy, right? Like Hunter is an elite defensive end. And so I just think it's very, very exciting. And we'll see. I mean, with just when on the defensive line, Twyman to me is exciting. He fell all the way to the 6th. And I know there's concerns about his pro day. I was reading that I think he ran a 5.440, which is very, very, very slow. It's a 5.440 is not good, even for a defensive tackle. But he put up 40 reps on the bench press, which is, I mean, for context, the record all time is 49 reps. And so I know there's a fairly big difference, but 40 reps on the bench press at 225 is an elite number. It's 5 more than what Aaron Donald did. And I'm excited about Twyman. He's going to be a 3 technique. If I'm not mistaken, they were talking about him just getting a little bit slimmer, dropping down a little bit to closer to 280. So the vision for him almost certainly is to be a rotational D tackle, come in on 3rd downs, hopefully be a terror in the pass rush. Getting him in the 6th, similar to getting Robinson in the 4th, just an excellent pick.
Yeah, and I've seen some of those names float around about talking about how Hunter got him in like late in the draft, and like, is this a comparable player? And I think that can be helpful. It can be like it.
Right.
I think there's it can be dangerous too. I think sometimes like, oh, like, yeah, this could be the next one, and really, who knows? But there is potential, and at this point, that's what you're going off of.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Smith-Marsette, where are you at with him, and what are your thoughts?
Right. Well, I see. Like I just agree. I think with most Vikings fans, in that I'm not super concerned about wide receiver 3, just because I think that I think of it more so as like a whole in terms of like pass catchers, and so Jefferson and Thielen are number 1 and 2 pass catchers, but then if Dalvin Cook's my number 3 pass catcher, and Irv Smith Jr. is my number 4, I feel very, very, very good about that, right? And then if someone like Chad Beebe or BC Johnson ends up being my number 5, okay, no worries. Like if Chad Beebe or BC Johnson are my 5th option, I feel pretty good about my offense. Now, I get if there's an injury, then that obviously impacts things. Is it ideal to have a good wide receiver 3 for when we're in 11 personnel? Absolutely, it is. I just don't think it's as important as I think most folks would insist. That being said, I do like Smith-Marsette in that I think he can, again, I'm not a college expert. I'm not a draft expert. Smith-Marsette, though, from what I've read, he's a bit of a burner. I think he runs really fast. And I think in that wide receiver 3 role, that's probably what you want. Someone who can because, I mean, Thielen and Jefferson, they can go deep and they can succeed going deep. But generally speaking, these are guys who are short and intermediate. They can work out of the slot. And so for me, I want someone who can line up on the outside and take the top off the defense. And if Smith-Marsette can do that, I think that can complement really what the rest of the offense is doing, right?
Yeah. Well, and I like that was interesting because I did think about that, but I also, my first reaction, even just what I saw from how he was used in college, was actually some of these jet sweep plays or these wide receiver screens. And I noticed that really wasn't a part of the Minnesota Vikings offense. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It does feel like those are often plays that can be really productive and almost feel like sometimes like they can be an easy 5 yards at times. And it felt at time like with the Vikings, like you got Dalvin Cook who can really run, and you got some of these throws to Jefferson and Thielen who are, you're saying, these short intermediate throws. It felt like they had to work a lot on offense to really do this. And some of these plays, I don't know. From watching other games, I feel like being able to get someone like him in motion and getting him to the ball early and letting him use his speed feels like a dynamic that could be added to the offense that could be really helpful.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, in the past, Kube has, and I recognize that Gary Kubiak is now retired. It's now his son. But it's going to be the same offense. It's going to be the same sort of style. I guess neither Sam and I, nor anybody for that matter, could say with any certainty how Clint Kubiak is going to differ. Maybe that means more jet sweeps. Maybe that means more wide receiver screens. Maybe that means more of this style where you try and get the offense or the defense rather moving more side to side, and then maybe trying to some of these easy plays, relatively speaking, to pick up those 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, and then in some instances a lot more if everything kind of breaks out and goes well. The one thing I'll say about that is, so everything we talk about this all the time. Everything on football it's all interconnected. So if you can threaten a team deep, if they have to respect the fact that they can hit this guy in stride, maybe it's not even Smith-Marsette, maybe it's Thielen Jefferson, maybe you burn them deep 2, 3, 4 times. They therefore have to defend, right, and respect that area of the field, and therefore it's much easier to succeed on those, short passes and the end rounds and those, because there's less bodies around the line of scrimmage. And so, in a sense, counterintuitively, if you can go deep, then you can do those things more. And if you can do those things more, then you can go deep more. But, so you're always trying to play with the defense And because there's no such thing as a defense that can defend everything. It just doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And so the more an offense can do, and the more unpredictable they can be, and the more areas of the field they can attack, that just makes it so much more difficult, I think, for any defense.
Yeah, it for me, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, and I obviously know that there's like that was just that observation was from limited knowledge, but I also know like it's easy to watch someone like the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're doing these things, and you're like, oh man, like 5-6 yards at a time, like defense just this seems so easy and unstoppable, but it's because you got someone like Tyreek Hill that can absolutely burn you whenever he feels like, sometimes like whenever he wants to. And so, it for sure there's some dynamics, but I do feel like if they could adding some more of the, like being able to add speed to that offense feels it would be significant. And not that he's comparable to Percy Harvin, but like someone like that who is dynamic and when you get the ball into his hands can make up a lot of yards and get out quick and like you said, gets the defense moving side to side, feels like a good add. Last pick that you want to talk about from the mid to late rounds?
I think only thing I'll add from there. So I like Twyman, I like Robinson, I like Smith-Marsette. I don't think the tight end. I don't think Davidson's. I think you're probably talking about a practice squad guy. I mean, Bynum hopefully is good depth, and then the running back hopefully can help on special teams. I mean, Smith-Marsette and the running back, we'll see. We really need help on special teams, and so hopefully one of those two can be a great returner.
Yeah, but and I know that there's been some additions, and this week we won't cover the undrafted players. There has been some moves there that could impact. I know it's like even just at the kicker position and that. I did find the Davidson pick, a tight end / punter, a real fascinating one.
I know, it's so strange.
One of those things where it's like it sounds like he's an elite athlete, and obviously it's good to have guys around like that. It kind of feels like if you're good at two things, you might not be great at one thing.
Exactly.
But maybe, who knows? Maybe he is. I feel like it's never a bad thing to have dynamic guys like that on your team. Like you said, if it's a practice squad guy that can come in and punter gets hurt, then maybe you get someone that's out there that can actually kick more than 15 yards down the field. But at that point, you got some darts to throw, and maybe it's a good guy to add. Transition to third down, and there was a minor trade this week with Mike Hughes being dealt the first round pick from 2018, traded to Kansas City. Not a whole lot of return, swapping they get a 6th round pick in return and send a 7th out the door. What do you think of the deal?
So the one thing I'll say, so initially I was looking at it and saying to myself, gosh, so you're sending Hughes in a 7th, and then you're getting a 6th in return. Kansas City, in all likelihood, is going to be a top team in the NFL, which means they're going to be picking at the end of a round. And so you're probably talking about, maybe gaining 10, 20, 25 picks. I was seeing that Ben Gosling, he tweeted that Kansas City apparently has 2 6th round picks, and it'll be so the Vikings will get the 6th round pick that ends up being higher. So whichever one ends up being higher in the round. And so I suppose there's potential that we gained, 30, 40, 50 spots, right? And so I guess it's more significant than what I initially was seeing. Even still, to see Mike Hughes, who's only 24 years old, who obviously the team really liked, relatively recently, 2018. Hard to believe 2018 is 3 years ago. But they obviously felt really good about him because they drafted him in the first round. And so it was surprising in a lot of ways. It wasn't surprising that they declined his 5th-year option. There's just no way at this point that he demands that expensive of a contract in his 5th year, but I thought for sure that he'd be brought back as depth. I suppose I was wrong on that one. I feel bad. He's only been able to play in 24 or 48 games because of injury, and so I feel a little bit bad. Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, this dude's a bust, but gosh, it's tough, right? Like he's a young guy who just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And I know that when he has been healthy, he's really hasn't played that well, all things considered. He's at best been average, but I think in reality he's been a below average corner so far in the NFL. And so it's disappointing, but I think the upside is that the Vikings gain a little bit of, more cap room now. And you're talking about they still have like around $6 million even after, I think, signing their draft class. And then you got close to $8 million coming as of June 1 when the Kyle Rudolph transaction, like cutting Kyle Rudolph, actually hits the cap. And so you're talking now mid-teens, getting close to mid-teens of cap space. That is a ton of money to have at this point in the offseason, especially within the context of the COVID cap. So it's wild. It's just wild to think that they've been as active as they have been. They've done as much as they have, and they're able to still kind of work it a little bit, trade away Mike Hughes, and contribute to what is a relatively substantial amount of money that they may be able to use to maybe bring in a corner, right? Or maybe bring in another lineman. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But you got to think, to me, I don't know, Sam, how you were thinking about this, but this must be about the next move rather than, you're not trading away Mike Hughes at this point just for those extra draft slots. Moving up in the next draft, you're trading him. To my mind, you must be trading him because you're saying, okay, we get a little bit more financial flexibility so we can make moves X and Y. Is that what you think, or?
Yeah, like I think that's the thing, right? Like you can see this draft there's two factors to it. There's the improved draft pick, which, like you said, it could range from just moving up a few slots to actually a significant increase. And to me, it's nice on paper, but at that point, you see that the way that teams pick in those rounds, like they've got guys that they just want to get, and so I see minimal value there, but I do think that the cap space is a little bit more significant. And the way that they are right now, it's funny to be saying this with where we were at before the season ended and everyone was concerned about the cap issues, but they've got enough money it's almost as if there's some professionals that know what they're doing and they've got a job to be able to take care of this.
That's right. Exactly. You almost think this is their entire career and they've done this for decades.
It's almost like as if their full-time job is to manage this, where our job as fans is maybe just to sit and trust the process a little bit. But they've got the money they're dealing with now is not wiggle room cap space kind of money. It's go and add someone money.
Precisely. And that's exactly right. Yeah.
So if they don't do anything, I'm like, okay, what were we doing here?
Right.
But again, this is the problem, is when you look at trades in a vacuum, you're like, oh, I don't know. And like you said, this is a young player, maybe a little bit early to give up on them. But when we see the domino effect, it's not just Mike Hughes for a pick swap, but it's Mike Hughes and removing that cap hit, which will allow for us to get a player that and spend an extra 1.5 or 1.3 or whatever the number is on someone to improve. And at this point, I don't think you're looking to continue to have a bunch of, like, what's the point of having someone that's on that average, below average kind of position when you could just spend a little bit more money and actually get someone that's going to be a positive contributor and can be maybe a difference maker on the defensive end.
I think that's fair. And I think, the guys over at The Athletic, Chad Graff and Arif Hassan, if I'm not mistaken, they've pointed out that Minnesota's tendency seems to be it's a 3 strikes and you're out. So they do their darndest to give their picks the 3 years. And it's a little different, obviously, if you're, being a second round pick or first round pick is different than being a 7th round pick. A lot of 7th rounders just, never make it. But for some of the higher end guys, even through the mid rounds, it tends to be 3 years. And that's kind of your window to show Minnesota's leadership, show the coaching staff, show the front office, hey, I deserve to be here, right? I help this team. And if you can't do it in those 3 years, they tend to be very, very willing to move on. And I think that lines up almost perfectly with what you're seeing right now with the Hughes situation. And so, yeah, 3 years, it really didn't work out. They moved on from him. The value they get in return is ideally, I guess, 40, 50 draft slots higher, and a little bit extra money that ideally they can use to improve the roster somehow, whether it's at corner or somewhere else. It doesn't matter to me. Just use the money's only good insofar as it, leads to impact players, right? And so there's who cares about having money if you don't actually have, good players for that money. And so hopefully they make a move here at some point.
Yeah, like I kind of assumed that it would be on the defensive end, but who knows? Like,
right,
there is the possibility of doing anywhere. Like, really, at this point, you're just looking for improvements anywhere that could happen.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
Just in concluding here, it's not related to the Vikings, but I think it is something that's interesting to football fans. And I don't know, do you have any opinion on Tim Tebow and this news, his next comeback to the NFL?
I'm thrilled. Like I know it's people are going to disagree with me and stuff. Like, so Sam and I are both believers. We're both Christians. We share the same faith as Tebow, and so I think that I'm probably biased toward Tebow. Like I'm inclined to cheer for him. I don't even know. I like him, and I got to say, like I saw Matthew Berry, the ESPN fantasy guy. He made a post on Facebook where he said, I'm pretty sure it's Barry, who was saying that, like, he just respects the fact that after all these years, like, Tebow he could just kind of fade into the background. He's got tons and tons of money. He could get into all kinds of media jobs. He could live just like a totally easy life and never put himself out there, never try, never risk anything. And that would be like, he'd be totally fine, right? Like, and that would be, he could live an amazing life doing that. Instead, after all these years, he's putting himself back out there. He's chasing it. He may very well end up doing horribly and may end up failing, but dude's going for it, and you got to respect that. And so, to me, I love the fact that he's back in the NFL. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. I've always loved it. I had a memory that popped up on Facebook a few weeks ago when he signed with Philly years ago, and I had joked that the Super Bowl was coming to Philly, and it ended up not actually happening. We were saying this that off the pod earlier, like, the idea of switching positions and going to tight end makes a lot more sense than his whole attempt at the baseball thing.
Yes.
Like, for him to be like, he's a football player. This is a talented player, an athletic player,
right?
Someone that shouldn't be throwing the ball.
Right.
Like, I think
maybe on trick plays, like, you think trick plays, like, he can be kind of your Swiss Army knife, and maybe on trick plays here and there he could do stuff like that.
He can throw the ball twice. Like, we'll give him two throws this year. Right. I even watching that the overtime pass that he had to Thomas, like, watching that ball wobble in there.
Exactly. That's what I was just against Pittsburgh. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, like, he got the ball there, so he did throw it, and like he played quarterback at the NFL level, like, way more than any of us will ever be able to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am absolutely cheering for him. Like, I think for someone like Jacksonville, like, to have some kind of buzz and to make this happen, like, you know what, all the power to them. If he plays on the field, I will be absolutely watching.
Yeah.
Who knows? I like, my expectation is quite low in terms of actually him ever seeing the field again in an NFL game. But I hope
okay, so here it is. So, Sam, are you predicting he doesn't make it? Do you think he'll make the final roster and get on the field?
Oh man, like, what are we like? I guess this is the thing of, like, I would put his cap at playing like 3 plays
for the whole season, or like per game
for the whole. I don't know. I could see him. I don't know. I hate to be the pessimist, like, not actually believing.
No, be it. You're usually the optimist. So
okay, I don't see him. If he plays more than 3 plays all season, I'll be shocked.
All right. Put me in then. He's going to be – I think he's actually going to make Jacksonville's roster and actually suit up on game days. I think he's going to be, now I'm combining special teams in this, because I think with his builds, he could end up being an excellent, like, he's, okay, so it's like Sam was saying, does it make more sense for him to go to tight end than baseball? Of course. Like, if you see this guy in person and someone says, yeah, this guy's an NFL tight end, you'd be like, yeah, I could believe that. Like, dude is built. He's a big, strong guy. And so, which doesn't mean he can be an NFL tight end. There's more to it than just being big and strong. I get that. But he's a Heisman winner. He's played, elite college football, and he's played in the NFL. I think he makes the team, and not only that he plays like 10 to 15 snaps a game as a backup tight end who ends up being a bit of a Swiss Army knife, who can do different things on offense and who can contribute on special teams. Makes the team 10 to 15 snaps a game. Tim Tebow.
Wow.
That's
I
my
love
guess.
that. I like that. I wish that was my answer, but it's not. I just can't. I can't. I don't buy it right now.
We're gonna find out.
He's actually like realizing how old he is.
I know he's not young anymore, right?
He's not a young man anymore.
Yep.
So it's like, dude, I don't know. Like, what he?
The one thing I'll say about that, and this is maybe it's true. He's not 22, but most guys his age in the NFL have a lot more wear and tear on their bodies than Tebow does. Like, I imagine his hips, his back, his knees are in better shape than most guys his age, because he hasn't been, you know what I mean? Like, hasn't been in the trenches, getting hit like crazy. Baseball is a lot easier on your body.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to be 34 by the time the season starts.
Wow. Okay, I thought 31 or 32.
I thought he was 31, so I looked it up. It's at least Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge.
Yeah, that's right.
It says August 14th, 1987.
Wow.
And
Okay.
which is actually kind of funny because we're younger than that, but not a whole lot younger, and it's kind of sad to see these people that are like, oh wow, they're like,
Yeah, right.
you're getting old, and it's like, yeah, that means we're getting old too.
Yeah.
So you know what, I am. This is a win-win in the sense of like, I'm hoping that you're right over me, but I don't know. I just can't see it.
All right. Okay, we're gonna find out.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap up quickly here, but we did want to provide a quick Wild update since they are into the playoffs. They've clinched. We know their first round opponent. We know they're going to be playing Vegas. And honestly, like, I don't know if I've actually been able to convey. I don't know if I've been upfront enough about like how good this Minnesota team is. Like, I think that their division in terms of top talent versus bottom talent is they got to feed on some bottom teams this year, and that was definitely easy. I know that their strength of schedule, that from what it says on Hockey Reference, is 20th out of 31. I like looking at the opponents and the teams that they played this year. It's a good thing they didn't play Colorado. They went 3-5 against Colorado, and they got beat up by the Blues. But against Vegas, they were 5-1-2. So 5 wins, 1 loss, and 2 overtime losses.
Really?
Which is pretty significant. And I definitely think they match up better against Vegas. I have seen more than one bracket of people that aren't Minnesota Wild fans, but that are people within the Minnesota or within hockey media pick the Minnesota Wild to win the cup. And I think that is maybe a little
to win the cup?
Yeah, which I think is a little bit
wow.
of this like humorous take of like, oh, here's this up and coming. I don't even know if I can call it an up and coming team, but here's this fun team that was boring all the time and now have surprised people and are actually better than we think they were. And
right.
So I think it may be a little bit more of like a humorous stretch, but I all season I think have been saying, you know what, it's Vegas and Colorado's like that. We, as a hockey fan, you're definitely hoping for that to be the round 2.
Yeah.
But as a Minnesota Wild advocate, I think that I actually think that they have a strong chance to really make a series out of this Vegas series. I would still put my money on Vegas, but
yeah,
it would be fantastic for them to do it.
I think Vegas will win in the end because Vegas is a great team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Minnesota's still not quite there yet. If they can if they can make a long series out of this and take them to 6 or 7 games, that's a win to me. That's a win for the Wild.
Yeah, I think as an outside observer, I think it's a win. I don't know if a Minnesota Wild fan would view it as a win.
Right. Yeah, sure.
They're in this weird spot, and even I know, and we'll talk about it on another time because there's still lots of time to come before the off season. But I know that there is some talk of Eichel going to Minnesota,
I
and,
saw
and
every fan base is talking about Eichel going to their team.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I was listening to a Leaf podcast yesterday, and they were talking about Eichel.
Yeah,
going.
that's right.
Okay, so like
Yeah,
let's chill here, but
Yeah.
reputable people talking about him going to Minnesota, and I just think that you got to figure out a little bit where the team's at. But you know what, I would love for them to be a team that surprises and goes and actually does some significant damage in the playoffs. And if they were able to make it out of their division and get to that Final Four, then like that would be just an absolute riot.
Yep.
And outside of the Leafs, I would definitely be cheering for them.
Fair enough. Okay, so then do you have we've been doing all kinds of predictions this episode here. Let's finish it off with one more before we send the listeners off. What's your Stanley Cup prediction? Who's going to play in the finals, and who's going to win?
So I've been criticized by a couple of friends about just not actually like having belief in my team. And as a Leafs fan, I feel like we've just been a tortured fan base, and I feel like almost every fan base actually probably feels like they've been tortured in some way or another. But it's been a long road. When I filled out my bracket, I have the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs making it to the finals with the Leafs winning the cup. Do I believe that? I can't let myself get there.
I love that.
But I am going for it. And like as a Leaf fan, that would be like I could like I don't know. As I'm talking about, I'm flustered because it would be so exciting not only to win the cup but to beat the Bruins. Like if the Leafs sucked and didn't win a game and like their franchise somehow like disbanded for the rest of life and did it, like if they could go out and do that, I don't even care. Like that would be an ultimate goal, and I would ride that to my grave. I would love that for the next 60 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I'm picking the Leafs, I want to, like my gut tells me like pick another team to like save some credibility, but at that point, then it's that I think that even is just a decrease in credibility. So
yeah, right.
That's my pick. There's a lot of teams I believe are better, but yeah.
Yeah, it's give me the Lightning. I'm picking Tampa. I just think they're an excellent team, top to bottom. I think Tampa Bay is gonna win.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'll be a chicken and throw out that whoever makes it out of Minnesota's division will be my dark horse, although it's probably actually the Leafs of the dark horse.
Yeah, definitely.
But whoever makes it out of that division will be my backup answer. But yeah,
fair enough.
Oh, anyways, thank you all for listening. It's been fun. It's been a good run. It's been a little bit of a longer episode, but it's been great. But be sure to stop by the VikingsGazette.com for your Minnesota Vikings news, commentary, and analysis. The Vikings Gazette can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Vikings Gazette, and we will talk with you all in a couple weeks. Thank you.